Welcome back to another edition of Through the Smoke, a Miami Hurricanes football and recruiting podcast here on the 24/7 Sports Network. David Lake, joined as always by Gabby Urrutia. We're here to preview Miami's bounce back game against Stanford here this week. We'll dive into that game in a couple minutes. Before we start, want to highlight a couple of our sponsors on the front end. Of course, Canes Connection. That's Miami's collective. Critical part of the program. Miami's looking to finish strong here with this 2026 recruiting class, and every contribution helps. Every contribution matters. So go support those guys at the grassroots level of talent acquisition at canesconnection.com. Also, want to highlight our guy, Nick Musarino. If you've been injured in any type of accident, right? Slip and fall, boating, trucking, Uber Lyft accident, any type of car accident, Nick Musarino is the personal injury attorney you should contact at 561-960-9870 or visit his website at flinjury.law. So again, Stanford traveling across the country, take on number 9 Miami at Hard Rock Stadium. 7 p.m. kickoff. Game's going to be on ESPN. Miami once again in a prominent primetime TV slot. One interesting thing, Gabby, about this game, they're going to be wearing different uniforms. Going to be wearing the Honor and Support uniforms created by Adidas. That features green camouflage and American flag details. No names on the back of these jerseys. It'll just say Hurricanes at the nameplate. So that'll be different to look at. Before we dive deep into this game, Gabby, want to give you the floor first to highlight maybe some expected visitors from a recruiting standpoint who's expected to be there.
Yeah, David, it's going to be, this Stanford game is probably the one just after the bye weeks, road game at Florida State, then Friday night game against Louisville. This was kind of like their opportunity to get back as far as just the, getting big time guys kind of in on campus. There's a few that I think are worth highlighting just in this class of 2026, right? Miami's still trying to put a bow on this group. Two guys that they're very much after. One of them being top 247 wide receiver Milan Paris. He's a 6'5.5", 190 pounder out of the state of Ohio, a former Iowa State commit that the Miami offered him this fall, and he's kind of flown up the board. My understanding is that this is a top offensive target for the Hurricanes. I think that they feel like coming into the visit, they are pretty well positioned in this recruitment. Of course, it's about crossing that finish line and closing. So we'll see if that's something that's able to happen this weekend. He's already visited Oklahoma. I'm not sure if there's an Oregon visit or anything like that in the works, but I know this Miami visit is being extremely highly anticipated by the staff because they feel like he's someone that they want to acquire and that I think truthfully they plan to. They feel like they can get this done. So we'll see what this weekend looks like with Milan Paris. It's going to be a big one. He's a top 100 talent. So and again, 6'5.5", 195 pounds. Not really a body type Miami has on the roster. A defensive uncommitted target that Miami's also bringing in is Dre Quinn out of Buford, Georgia. He transferred to the Atlanta area power as a senior. He's someone that has emerged as a high power 4 prospect here. He originally committed to Clemson, I believe over Texas in the summer. He wanted to start taking visits after Clemson kind of started to spiral down. As we know, in order to do that, you kind of have to just decommit because Clemson doesn't play the visit game. And so Dre Quinn backed off of his Clemson commitment. I think he has been to Mississippi State. I believe he's been up to Ohio State, or at least I know Ohio State, Tennessee, Miami are 3 top contenders. I think, I think this is going to be, again, a big visit. Jason Taylor went to go visit him a couple weeks ago at his high school. Dre Quinn is a big defensive prospect to know. Miami's also recruiting his teammate, Bryce Perry Wright. Of course, at a high level too. So, definitely one situation to watch. Another class of 2026 prospect, I think I would just kind of keep an eye on, as a potential flip target that I would, just for the weekend. Tight end Gavin Weller, he's a Colorado commit. He's someone that I've kind of gotten some buzz, could potentially be in for this game. We'll see if that ultimately follows through. My understanding is that it will, but we'll kind of keep track of that one into game day to see if the Colorado tight end commit comes through. He's another one that got offered a couple weeks ago. I think he's 6'5", 255 pounds, so he's a big tight end target that has become a target this fall. So, and then in the 2027 class loaded, a number 3 wide receiver, Keyshawn Bowman is in. Jamar Thompson, the local defensive tackle, is another big 2027 target that's expected in as well. So it's a good group of prospects in the junior class. Again, we have all that at InsideTheU.com. If you want to dive a little bit deeper into who's expected, there's definitely a lot more there.
Yeah, check out throughout the day too, InsideTheU.com to see who does make it in, who rolls through. So Gabby, of course, does a great job keeping those updates rolling in, and go subscribe today. All right, let's dive into just the format of this preview podcast. Let's start with injury talk, and from a Miami standpoint, to me, Gabby, the only one to really kind of monitor is Akeem Mesidor, who sustained kind of a lower extremity injury against Louisville. He, was seen limping off the field. He did come back and he played uh, after that, but it's just a matter of how's it feel after that, intense, work when the adrenaline wears off and, your Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, etc. We'll see what the injury report says that transparent. We're recording this Thursday afternoon. Injury report comes out tonight. Um, my guess, this is just me guessing. I would say maybe it'll be a questionable, maybe even a doubtful. That's just me. Um, if it were me, Gabby, this is just my opinion. I'm not reporting anything. I'd let him rest this week and get him ready for SMU the following week. So we'll see what the injury report says on that. Stanford, quite a few guys to monitor on their side of things. They got banged up pretty bad in their win over Florida State. Their quarterback, Ben Gulbranson, looked like during that Florida State game, he sustained some sort of lower extremity injury. So we'll see what their injury report says about that. Their best running back, Micah Ford, injured his right leg. That one looked serious, looked kind of long term, but you never know, I guess. And we'll see what the injury report says about that one. Their right guard, Emeka Ugorji, sustained an injury during the game, and so his availability is something to monitor. Cornerback Colin Wright, probably Stanford's best defensive player. He was a game time decision for the FSU game, played 30 snaps against FSU, and then didn't play the rest of the game from that point on. So his availability is important, and we'll see what the injury report says on him. Aaron Morris is another starting cornerback. He's only played in 3 games, but he started all 3 games. He missed the FSU game due to a neck injury he sustained against SMU earlier in the season. And then also worth noting, this isn't an injury situation, but it's a suspension situation. Their starting free safety, Mitch Leiber, will miss the first half as he serves a targeting penalty from the end of the FSU game. He had a brutal hit on Tommy Castellanos. So they'll be potentially without some key members of their secondary. But again, we'll see what the injury reports officially say as they're released Thursday night. All-time series, this is the first ever meeting between these two programs. Mario Cristobal is 2-2 against Stanford as a head coach, dating back to his time at Oregon. Stanford this season, they are 3-4, which is impressive considering kind of the preseason expectations of Stanford. They're kind of in this transition year, in terms of leadership and a lot of guys transferring out when they had a head coaching change in like late March, early April. Their over under preseason win total was 3.5 wins. So they're on the cusp of kind of hitting the over maybe at some point this year. Um, they started the year slow, lost at Hawaii to start the year. Then they lost at BYU. Then they earned a win against Boston College at home, lost at Virginia, beat San Jose State at home, lost at SMU, beat FSU at home. So they're 3-0 at home, 0-4 on the road. Uh, I do think, though, they are a team that is slowly improving, slowly kind of finding some sort of identity and frankly, just finding confidence and going out and being able to compete, you know, in a physical manner. That's kind of their style of play. Their interim head coach is Frank Reich. He's an interesting story as it relates to this Miami rivalry because he not rival Miami game. He burst onto the scene as a player back in 1984. He was a backup at Maryland. Their starter was Boomer Esiason. He entered the game when Miami was up 31-0, and Frank Reich led a comeback 42-40 win, which at that time was the biggest comeback in NCAA history. So interesting history between Frank Reich and Miami as a player. Frank Reich,
Surprised no one's talked about that more this week. I've never heard that story.
it's interesting. He then went on to be a 14-year quarterback in the NFL, primarily as a backup, was an offensive coordinator in the NFL with the San Diego Chargers and Eagles. He was then a head coach with the Indianapolis Colts from 2018 to 22. Then he was a Carolina Panthers head coach in 2023 for one season. Was fired, I think, in the middle of that season. As a NFL head coach, he has a 41-43 record, and he is the primary play caller for the Stanford offense. I think another person to highlight, just from an organization standpoint, is their general manager, Andrew Luck. He is an important person to know in the equation of what Stanford is and trying to be in the future. He wants to build a Stanford program and roster that is similar to what Stanford was when he was a player there from 2009 to 2011, when they were a team that featured, big athletic offensive linemen with talented talented tight ends and a sound defense, a real physicality type of approach. Kind of think of like a, Big Ten, physical Big Ten type of mind, like Jim Harbaugh type teams, right? When Jim Harbaugh was there, similar approach, Jim Harbaugh teams in Michigan, etc. And Stanford does run a lot of 12 personnel. They'll even sprinkle in some 13 personnel looks, which means two tight ends or three tight ends um, on the field together. Their defensive coordinator is Bobby April. He's also coaches linebackers. He's coached linebackers with the Jets and Bills a decade ago. Wisconsin outside linebackers coach from 2018 to 2022. He's been at Stanford since 2023. His dad's a longtime NFL assistant. Uh, you know, like everyone kind of these days, Stanford runs a multiple style of defense, different looking fronts, etc. But it's a lot of four down, pass rush type of situation, pass rush approach on defense. Stanford stats this year, look, we don't need to really go through them all. On offense, like they're in the hundreds in a lot of categories. Scoring offense, 19 points per game. Their rushing offense is in the hundreds. Third down conversion rate is in the hundreds. Sacks allowed in the hundreds. And their 44% red zone touchdown rate on offense is 127. They're passing for 229 per game, which is 67th in the country, but their passing efficiency uh, rating ranks 101st in the country. Defensively, a lot of categories in the hundreds as well, or close to the hundreds. They're allowing 28 points per game, which ranks 94th. Their pass efficiency defense ranks 114th. They allow a ton of explosives through the air. They're allowing just over 300 yards passing per game. The one thing they do that is elite, honestly, is their red zone defense. Their red zone touchdown rate is 38%, which ranks sixth best in the country. So they're really kind of just the true definition of a bend but don't break type of defense. Uh, I would say their run defense statistically is good. They're allowing teams to only 117 yards per game, which ranks 32nd in the country. But I think it's also fair to say, Gabby, like our teams not running the ball as much against them because they're able to effectively pass it so well. Again, 304 passing yards per game, which ranks 132nd nationally. Special teams, five different players handling kick return duties. As a team, they're averaging 16.9 yards per attempt. Punt return, Liam Thorpe is their main guy there. He's averaging 9.7 yards per punt return on only 3 attempts. Their kicker, Emmett Kenny, is 10 of 12 on field goal attempts, while their punter, Aiden Flintoft, is averaging 43.6 yards per punt attempt. So that's kind of their statistical profile, Gabby. Let's dive into the personnel, and I'll give you the floor here. Quarterback, as we mentioned, is, we'll see what the injury situation is there. I mean, we'll talk about both because it's on the table that both play. I kind of expect Elijah Brown, the backup, to be the guy this week. That's just me. I don't know. I would be surprised if Ben Gulbranson's good to go. But anyways, let's start with Ben Gulbranson, the transfer from Oregon State. What are your thoughts on him, as you watch Stanford?
Yeah, I mean, for me, David, he just, it seems like kind of prototypical statue quarterback. He's not very mobile. I think he wants to kind of make quick decisions. I think he kind of looks for that tight end. Sam Roush will get to him. I feel like he's kind of trying to get the ball out quickly. Not the biggest arm, and to me, just can kind of force it at times. Under pressure, I don't think he's the most, kind of composed or able to kind of just make something out of a tough situation. So for me, I think he might be the more ideal. I think both of them. There's not really anything.
Not much mobility
Right,
between
right,
both, right?
right. Yeah, and but for him, I feel like especially he's just kind of like you know pro style quarterback, like the way you would expect, I guess, in a Frank Reich offense. But yeah, so for me, nothing super, threatening about really either. But Cole Branson is someone that I think Miami could really just rattle up, and I think Miami could make it difficult for him to kind of get into a flow if they're able to just be disruptive at the line of scrimmage. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see where it goes with Elijah Brown, former like high school star, right, at Mater Dei.
Yeah,
He was like I don't know exactly what his high school record was, but I remember when he was coming out, he was kind of like a long time starter at Mater Dei, like multi-year starter for them, and ended up didn't get a ton of traction as far as just being a power four quarterback, but Stanford is where he ended up. And you kind of see what he does when he kind of operates the offense. And to me, he's just a very inconsistent passer. I think he struggles with his accuracy. He struggles just kind of, I think, with his processing at times too. And like you mentioned, David, he's not the most athletic either. So I think the quarterback situation for Stanford as a whole is pretty suspect. But Cole Branson, at least, is an older guy who began his career at Oregon State. That just maybe just gives you a little bit more of a veteran type of leader. But I still think he's a pretty limited talent as a whole.
I agree. And Elijah Brown, I think he started one game last year, and I think in that game he had like a 50% passing rate. And then against Florida State, he was 6 of 12 when he got thrust into that situation. So he
He
did
had some
lead.
he had some looks against Florida State too. He just missed.
Yeah, I mean, he did lead them for whatever it's worth on a big, like, what was it, 94-yard
Yeah.
touchdown drive in like the third or fourth quarter,
Yep.
where that touchdown drive was, what proved to be the difference in the game,
Right.
the 20th point, et cetera. So, um, but yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I would prefer to face Elijah Brown if I'm Miami, but there is more of an unknown element, I guess, because he is more inexperienced than Ben Gulbranson. How about their running back, Cole Tabb?
Yeah.
He was thrust into a bigger role with Michael Ford going down. He's a state of Florida guy,
Yep.
Pensacola area, right? If I remember, or
Fort
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 Walton
Walt
Beach.
Fort
Yeah.
Walton Beach. Yep.
And he made some plays against Florida State. What'd you think about him?
Yeah, he handled a workload. He was Thrust 2A again, a situation where he had to kind of take over the lion's share of carries. And I thought just in that situation, he's kind of a compact runner. I think he's like what, like
Yeah,
5'8", 200 pounds, but he runs hard. He kind of showed the ability to kind of, have the vision and the instinct to kind of kick
get
it to
to
the
the
outside.
edge.
Yeah, get to the edge, kick it to the outside and go make a play. On the goal line, he was able to kind of fight into the end zone to kind of punch one in there. Where it was, I think it was a fourth down play there on the goal line. It was kind of do or die, and he fought through after getting stuffed, I think twice before that. So he's a hard, again, just a guy who plays hard and runs hard, and again, kind of limited as far as just overall athleticism. I don't know how explosive he is, but he can kind of grind out some of those 3, 4 yard runs, and he can occasionally pop one if you give him a lane, and he kind of gets it out to the edge, and so he could potentially be a challenge.
Yeah, he seems tough. I mean,
Yeah, tough runner for sure.
tough guy. And he's going to be confident coming into this game. To me, like a guy like that, look, he had success against Florida State bouncing it out, but I think you could argue maybe he bounces it out a little too much. And so
Mm,
if you have a defense that's actually setting the edge, like Florida State really struggled to set the edge, um, I think you're going to see him struggle a little bit more. But he definitely got going against Florida
hmm
State and flashed some ability. Um, how about their pass catchers? And let's start
Yeah.
with CJ Williams.
Yeah, former top 100 talent out of Mater Day, teammates with Elijah
Mhm.
Brown. He was a kid that was very highly recruited out of high school, signed with USC. He then transferred. I don't think it worked. It didn't work out at USC. I think he quickly transferred to Wisconsin. Didn't work out at Wisconsin. Back home, out west, and he's making the most of his opportunities now. I think, when you look at the Stanford offense and what kind of makes it go, or who gives them some of that like kind of like big play element. I mean, CJ Williams is kind of that guy for them. I think he's kind of emerged as that guy for them. I believe he's their leading receiver, David.
Yes,
He's come on strong late, and he's been productive over their, down this stretch where they're kind of starting to play some better football. And he made plays for them, especially when they kind of get into the red zone. He's someone that is able to kind of, make a move and create a window to make a play. And he caught a slant for a touchdown in that game against Florida State. So I think he's kind of like their true like playmaker on the outside.
hmm
But yeah, so he's a talented player, and who's kind of starting to put it together a little bit.
contested catch guy he's good at that
Yeah.
and good at tracking the ball. Not overly explosive to me, but he is dangerous. He's their guy that they want to get the ball to. Who else amongst the pass catchers
Yeah.
caught your eye?
Sam Roush, I think their tight end. I think he's kind of one of their go-to guys. He does a lot. He does a little bit of everything for him. You see the way they kind of motion him around and move him around, whether that's just to kind of utilize him as a blocker, they'll bring him around and they'll kind of use him as a pulling blocker. He does a lot of kind of like
He's
out-cutting
nasty.
routes. Yeah, I think he's a really like talk about just like OG Stanford football. I think one thing they have right
He's
about the
nasty.
construction about this roster is that tight end Sam Roush. He's a really good tight end.
Yes.
He's someone that definitely caught my eye, and he's the complete package. He can get it done in the passing game. He can get it done as an inline blocker. I mean, just at his size, I think they said on the broadcast, he said he's like 6'5", 260 or something like that. Like
Looks like it.
he's
Yeah.
built like an NFL type of tight end. So,
Yeah. I
curious to
think
see
he
the
is an
impact he
NFL
makes.
tight
Yeah.
end, don't
Yeah, he
you?
could be. Yeah,
Like
he's. I didn't know who he was until I watched the FSU game, and I'm just like, man, this is like one of those kind of like diamond in the rough kids that you don't really know about because he's playing for Stanford. But I mean, he's a really really talented tight end.
he's a good player. How about their offensive line? It's not grading out
hmm
well. The stats tell you they're not very good. I think your eyes kind of tell you that too, but what do you think about that? They're also young, like they're
Yeah.
throwing a lot of freshmen in there. What do you think?
Yeah, it's tough. I think the right guard that went out, wasn't he a true freshman or something like
Yeah,
that? Like, they're getting young kids into those situations. Their tackles, again, just talk about just grading him out. I think they've allowed like 33 pressures, 8 sacks, so the tackles have kind of struggled. Yeah, to me, I just watching the State game though. I mean, they have like I think they play hard. Like this isn't a group that's just
yeah.
like a bunch of slouches. Like they're willing to kind of go and be
And the body
physical.
types look okay. Like
Yeah,
they don't
it's
look out of place.
no. They're. I felt like against Florida State, at least, it felt like they were kind of starting to click a little bit. I don't really know how they
I
graded
would
out.
agree with
Just
that.
just
I
just
would agree with
watching
that.
them, I was just like,
Yeah.
they're not getting like totally whipped.
I
At least
agree.
I didn't think so. I thought they got some push on the in the run game. Again, I thought they were physical. Are they? Again, they're young. They're kind of like maybe not overly like talented, but they definitely out physicaled that FSU defensive line. Who I don't know if they quit. I don't know if they don't care. I don't know if they're just not like whatever the situation is. But to me, I was more impressed with the Stanford offensive line in that game than I was. I probably liked the Stanford offensive line more than I thought I was gonna like them. Just watching, that
Yeah.
specific game, just trying to focus on who they are now. Because getting a win over Florida State for this Stanford team, I think is impressive. So it seems to me like a group that's starting. Maybe they're gonna be playing with a little bit more confidence coming into this game.
I agree. They weren't terrible against Florida State. So maybe they are a team that, or a position group that's steadily improving. How about their defense? Let's start up front. Anything catch your eye there?
Yeah, I mean, for me, again, I thought in this game they showed a willingness to kind of be physical. I mean, Florida State, which was like running for a ton of yards on everyone. I think FSU had 133 rushing yards on the day. Gavin Sawchuk
Yeah.
had 20 carries. He averaged 3 point yards, 3.5 yards per carry. So I mean, this Stanford defense. I mean, again, to me, watching that game, it looked like they were willing to play hard. They weren't. This wasn't a defense that was gonna like that quit or that just wasn't into it. Like these are guys that are probably limited athletically for the most part, but they play hard. They play discipline, and kind of had that bend but don't break approach. I feel like the corners are kind of always playing off. They kind of try to keep everything in front of them. FSU was not explosive at all, really. A couple pass plays to Deuce Robinson, but I feel like other than that, the FSU offense really struggled to get in rhythm, run the ball. They contained Tommy Castellanos, and even on the outsides, again outside of Deuce Robinson, who's going to get his because he's a great player. I thought they did a really good job of limiting some of that explosive element. So, again, I think just respect for the brand of football they play. I think personnel wise, again, I think there's maybe some limitations. I thought someone on the defensive line that kind of stood out to me, just body type wise, was Ernest Cooper. I believe he wears number 44. He was a former four-star recruit out of the state of Texas that went over to play for Stanford. Like I thought there were times that he flashed. I don't think that they have like the most juiced up, twitched up pass rushers
No.
by any means. I don't think they rush the passer very well at all. But I think they do a good job of just trying to kind of be physical up front and play hard up front. So
Yeah, I agree with all that. And again, I think this is the epitome of bend but don't break. And it's worked because in the red zone, they are forcing field goals and not allowing touchdowns. One guy that catches my eye a little bit is Jay Green.
yeah,
He's their nickel
yep.
safety guy. He plays well. Their middle linebacker leads them in tackles. Matt Rose, solid middle linebacker, just has a nose for the ball. But you're right, it's not an overly athletic or playmaking group, whether that's pass rushing or making plays on the ball. They only have one pick on the year as a team. Um, not not much dynamic talent, but they do play well together and execute what is being called. I will say you're right about how they like limited FSU through the air for the most part in terms of explosives. Castellanos did miss, to me, some wide open
Yeah.
shots. You agree with that? Like there was opportunities, but Castellanos missed them because
Yeah.
he's not a good passer. So I mean, the opportunities were there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. No,
So
there's gonna be opportunities. One thing about Jay Green too, David, just I mean, he's probably gonna be covered. Malachi Tony has just one missed tackle on the season, so we
yeah.
know Malachi Tony is a yak guy. So I think that'll be a nice little interesting matchup.
All right, let's take a break there, and on the other side, we'll talk about this game from a Miami standpoint. All right, we are back. Three things that we want to each see from Miami in this Stanford game. I'll give you the floor first, Gabby. Where do you want to take this?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm not gonna, I think just with Carson Beck, just a cleaner game from Carson Beck. I think this is kind of like a bounce back spot for him. Um, you know, this Stanford defense statistically, obviously not great against the pass. I think it's an opportunity for him to kind of just settle back in. You don't have to really do too much. Just kind of, you know, play a clean game. Get the ball to where it needs to be. Get the ball to open guys. Don't have to really force things where they don't have to be. I think there's going to be opportunities for him to kind of get back in a flow and in a rhythm, and I think that this could be a spot for him to kind of just flush out everything that happened against Louisville and just kind of put that one to bed, put together a nice solid performance. I want to see Carson Beck kind of have like a bounce back performance here against Stanford.
Yeah, and look, for me, like, I'll put these three things within one category, but I just think it's important for this team to get back to playing how they were playing before
Hmm.
Louisville from the standpoint of, to your Carson Beck point, don't turn the ball over. Like one turnover is fine. 3 to 4 to 5 turnovers, not good. So
Right.
don't turn the ball over. Tackle well. This defense has played really talented running backs before that Louisville game, tackled them well. Played really good receivers before that Louisville game, tackled them well. So they got to get back to that form against Stanford, which they should. And then, look, one thing that's kind of been an up and down thing is the penalties. And so, this is a game where, look, the penalty yardage probably isn't going to matter too much anyways, but you gotta play a clean game penalty.
Yeah.
Show you can do it. And look, Miami's gonna be the better team on every game remaining on the schedule. And if Miami doesn't turn the ball over, tackles decently, and isn't egregiously bad with penalties,
Yeah.
then Miami's gonna win all the rest of their games,
Yeah.
including this week. So
Right.
just week over week, brush that stuff aside that happened last week against Louisville and take the step forward or at least get back to who you were those first 5 weeks. Where else do you want
Yeah,
to go?
agreed with all that. And penalties were a big reason why they were that Stanford was even in the game last week on the opposite end.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Florida State was sloppy. Yeah.
super. And one of
Yeah.
them led to a touchdown instead of a field goal because they
Yep.
jumped off sides. Reestablishing the run game. I think it's important to kind of get back. I mean, you talk about Carson Beck and kind of him getting back in the groove. I think we've talked about this, how it gets you dated back to his Georgia struggles. When he was good at Georgia, they were running the ball well. When he's been good at Miami, they're running the ball well. When he's been bad, the opposite has been true. So I think it's important for Miami to kind of get back into the running game again. They've ran the ball well this season. It's not like it's not on the table. It's not like it's not there. We know it's there. So I think getting back into the flow of having a strong running game with Mark Fletcher and Shamar Brown, and maybe introducing Jordan Lyle back into this thing and seeing how maybe he can change the dynamic of how this has looked. I think it's a good opportunity to reestablish him or reintroduce him into this kind of flow or into this mix to see if he gives you something a little, gives you what you thought you were getting from him initially when he started the game against Notre Dame. So I do want to see them kind of get back on track on the ground.
Yeah, it's important. I'll stay on offense. I'll say, this is a game to get some explosive plays, I think, offensively, whether it's through the air or on the ground. I think, again, just by judging who Stanford's been this year, there's a chance to be very explosive through the air. In particular, Stanford has allowed 38 plays that have gone for at least 20 yards this season. That's 119th most in the country. 34 of those plays have been passing plays, which is 135th out of 136 teams. So this is a game to go get some explosive plays. I think it's going to be there on the ground too, but particularly through the air. So get some confidence going, get that good mojo back on offense in general. There's been a lot of, I don't know, to me, like overreaction this week as it relates to, the offense, etc. This is a game to quiet that, get back on track, and show who you have been. And another thing, Gabby, for me, like, I think it's important to get a third option going in this passing game, whoever it is. I honestly don't care who it is. It can be Elijah Lofton. It can be Josh Moore. It could be JoJo Trader. It could be Alex Bauman. Um, whoever you want to make it. It could be a running back. There needs to be a third option in this passing game who, to me, in this game, gets you 60 plus receiving yards. We know Malachi Tony is your top guy. We know CJ Daniels is a very good complementary outside receiver. For this Miami team to get to where it needs to get to in terms of like legitimately competing for things, they need a third option to emerge. It could be Keelan Marion, right? I didn't
Yeah.
mention him, but it could be Keelan Marion. Maybe he's the guy. So someone needs to step up and produce.
Do you have a preference on like who you would like that to be? Like, is there someone you're like, it would be
I
sweet
don't
if we
care.
kind of saw is it just anyone, just someone else produce at this point?
Just someone else produce. I mean, it'd be fun if it was like Josh Moore, but
Yeah.
maybe that's unfair to expect, but
Yeah.
even if it's Keelan Marion, like that's going to be a good sign. Like if
Yeah.
Keelan Marion goes out and has 110 yards, that's a good sign. But
Yeah.
someone,
Right.
Elijah Lofton, please
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
You know,
That's what I'm kind of honestly, just the tight ends in general. Like, I really wish they could unlock some sort of like passing game with the tight ends outside of just like a spot here or just like a ball, play here, play there kind of mixed in. Like, I wish there was some way to get these guys engaged, or I wish that was alive in this offense, especially you saw how dynamic Elijah Arroyo was in this offense. I mean, obviously he's not here, but some
right?
sort of life from the tight ends. We'll see what it looks like. But yeah, I definitely agree that they need to get a third pass catcher in like to produce a third pass catcher. Again, I think this is a very good spot to build somebody's confidence. I'm curious to see if it's like see who the ball finds or if they're going to be intentional about trying to get the ball to someone. So I am interested to see what the plan is with that.
Yeah. If it's intentional, then, I think you're looking at like a Josh Moore or a
Yeah,
Keelan Marion
yeah.
or maybe even a JoJo, right? Um, but yeah. Anywhere else you want to go?
The last thing I had was penalties, so we
Okay.
covered those.
How about a matchup you like the most going into this game?
Yeah, I think the tackles for Stanford's offensive tackles against Miami's edge rushers, with or without Akeem Mesidor, I think that there's just, with just Ruben Bain playing, I mean,
Yeah.
I think that there is just such a dynamic, explosive element out of that. And why I think there's just even more for that, because, Louisville was able to mask it because they had an effective quick passing game, right? Because
Yeah.
Chris Bell was elite. I don't think that Stanford has that outlet. I don't think they're going to have that. They're not going to have
There's
that
not
like
going to be another Chris Bell. And,
right.
Chris Bell did Chris Bell things and made Miami look bad.
Yeah.
There's not a Chris Bell this week.
Right. So I think it's going to be hard. Like, people said like Ruben Bain had a down performance. Well, I mean,
They just took him out of the
yeah,
game.
exactly.
Yeah.
Just they game planned him out of the game and they
Yeah.
were good at doing so, which is why that happened. But there's not a lot of teams that are going to be able to do that. And I definitely don't think Stanford will be able to. So, two quarterbacks that are not very mobile, tackles that have been suspect. I think that this is a good Ruben Bain game. And if Akeem Mesidor can't go, I am eager to see if it helps kind of get one of these young players going, whether that be a Armando Blunt or a Marquise Lightfoot, like a Marquise Lightfoot kind of I think a little bit more twitched up on the edge. Like I'm curious if we can kind of get some encouraging Marquise Lightfoot pass rush reps in this game. So
Yeah.
maybe even like a Booker Pickett in these third down
Yeah.
situations
He
or
showed up.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
and he played, and he can
yeah.
get back there quickly. Like when Booker Pickett, like when he beats his guy, it's like he's shot
Yeah.
out of a cannon. So maybe we could see some fun Booker Pickett stuff this weekend too.
For me, I'm going to go with Miami's throw game against Stanford's pass defense operation. Stanford just doesn't have dynamic pass rush. They don't have
Hmm.
dynamic playmakers in the secondary. They're potentially going to miss guys, particularly in the first half with that safety out. And again, they just have one interception on the year. So, in theory, Carson Beck should be able to have one of his more productive games of the season, quite frankly, on Saturday. So that's where I would circle. How about a matchup to keep an eye on?
Yeah, for me, it kind of just circles around the running game. Um, I think that that's an area that Miami kind of has struggled with. That's an area where Stanford was good against Florida State as
Yeah.
far as just limiting that. So was that a one-off performance from Stanford? Does Miami kind of struggle to get it going against them because they've been playing hard? Like I'm curious to see how that's going to go. I think Miami could potentially go, have a huge day on the ground against Stanford and really kind of get this thing back on track. But Stanford, again, is coming in. They're probably going to come in with some confidence. They're coming in with, coming off a game where they kind of handled business in that regard. So I think Miami's rushing game is going to get tested to some extent, and I hope that they're kind of ready to answer that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, frankly, I'm not worried about too many of
Right.
these,
These is
and I
I'm
know
not
you
exactly.
aren't
I'm
either.
not right. I'm not losing
But
sleep over this, but if I had to pick one,
right, for me, like, I'm just gonna go to a player, and I'm gonna go with Sam Roush. I'm interested just how
yeah.
Miami handles him, how they compete against him.
Hmm.
Like, I don't think he's a good enough player to single-handedly beat you,
Right.
but he's one of those rare tight ends that is fun to watch block, and I think he can impact the game with his blocking on the edge.
Hmm.
I think he's a physical tight end as well when he has the ball in his hands and there's yards after catch opportunities for him. So, Miami's tacklers are going to need to bring it. Like, it's not going to be fun to tackle that dude if he catches the ball in a little bit of space and can get upfield some with the full steam. So, um, just Sam Roush, how do they handle him? What type of impact does he have, whether it's blocking or tackling?
Yeah, good player.
How about a player that needs to step up?
Yeah, for me, it's Carson Beck. I think, I still think it's Carson Beck just because he's the quarterback of this operation and he's coming
Yeah.
off of a bad game, his
Yep.
worst game in a Miami uniform so far. So I think that I still think he's the guy that needs to, like, I think he still has the most to prove of anyone in this game just because you need to kind of put that one to bed. You don't want to let these performances pile on. So for me, Carson Beck is just the guy that I think needs to step up and play a clean game.
I'm gonna go with Wesley Bassett. He missed 5 tackles against Louisville. Cole Tab is kind of one of those squatty running backs with decent
Mhm.
speed, good acceleration. You got to wrap him up, get him on the ground. Maybe Wesley Bassett has to occasionally cover Sam Roush, the tight end we're referencing. So coverage will matter there. Tackling him after the catch will matter there too. So Wesley Bassett to me is a guy I'll be watching. How about potential player that for me, I'll say Carson Beck, right? I do think there's
Hmm.
a chance he's the best player in this game on Saturday. It's a get right game on paper. Again, Stanford's pass defense just isn't good. To me, it's a game where it's like I could see Carson Beck throwing for 270 plus in this game. So
Yeah. I'm gonna go on the defensive side. Like I think that this could be like a big Keontae Scott game. We've been high on him. I think that this is a good opportunity for, we talk about Sam Roush and the way he kind of impacts the game on the edge. I think Keontae Scott's someone that can contribute to Miami stopping the run. I also think he's gonna be a tough matchup for I think High is their slot receiver or the Farrell kid. None of those guys are very dynamic. So I think Keontae Scott is someone you can get kind of creative with in just the ways that you blitz him,
yeah,
the way that you can kind of use him as an extra hat in the run game. So I think Keontae Scott can be a nice little chess piece on defense for Corey Heatherman in this game, and I think he's going to end up making quite a bit of contributions to their efforts on the defensive side of the ball.
that's a good one. All right, time for predictions. The lines for this game, to me, Gabby, are both very interesting. Miami is a huge favorite, 30.5 point favorite against a power four opponent. To me, that's
Hmm.
a big spread. So 30.5 point favorite, Miami. The over under to me is also low at 45.5. So that's an implied score of like 38-7.
Yeah.
For me, just
Oof.
as an aside, Gabby, like for me, like it's hard for me to wrap my head around in today's modern era
Yeah.
holding a power four team to only 7 points. That's just me. Is it possible? Like Stanford's really banged up, you
Hmm.
know, potentially a backup quarterback. So it's on the table. But a score of 38-7 it's interesting, right? So
Yeah.
you have the floor. Where you want to go? Prediction.
Yeah, I think that that's a huge line. I mean, 30, I'm not going to take the 30 points. I mean, I think that that's a ton. And look, I also at the same time feel like Stanford's the worst FBS team that Miami's played this year. So like I think that
I would agree with that.
I
Yeah.
think that like at least at the, time of game, right? They obviously beat Florida State, but still I think that that's Florida State was still a better team when they kind of played. Anyways, 30 points is just a lot. Stanford's like you said it earlier in the show, 0-4 on the road. They've lost those games by 24, 24, and 28 against like the Power Four opponents. They think they I think they beat San Jose State by one or something like that, or whatever the situation was. Or they lost to Hawaii by three, but they lost to BYU, SMU, and Virginia by 3 scores a pop. I think 4 scores a pop. So I think that it's a situation where it's going to be tough for that Stanford team to travel. I do think they're playing better football right now, but
They are.
I think the biggest difference here and where I think that Miami just kind of just creates separation. Like even if they are still kind of sorting out some kinks that they're running into here in the middle of the season, especially I mean really on both sides of the ball. I just don't think Stanford has just like the explosive playmakers to really make Miami kind of pay for whatever they're still kind of sorting through. If Miami plays really good football, Yeah, they could probably cover the 30-point spread. I wouldn't predict that right now. I'm gonna go Miami 31, Stanford 10. So that's still a 21 point win. But I think it'll be comfortable, but I would push back against the 30 points. I think that's a ton.
If you were going to bet one of those lines, which one would you bet?
The over under or the spread?
Yeah,
I mean, I would probably take what's the over under?
45 and a half.
Yeah, maybe I would take the under 45 and a half because I don't think Stanford's going to be able to score a lot. I just
See,
think
I
there's so,
think I like the over. 45 is not that many points.
Miami hasn't scored 30 points in a
I know.
against a power forward. So that's why I think it's so if I'm assuming Miami's maybe somewhere even in the mid 30s, like I still think Stanford scoring more than 10 would be, I guess 10 to 13 I think is like the realistic range for them. I think anything more than that would be a probably a pretty disappointing defensive performance for me as far as just like not meeting expectations because I think that this is such a limited offense where you should be able to have your way if you're Miami and your defense is as good as you kind of think that it is. Um, I don't know, man. I would struggle to pick any of these lines honestly, but I don't love like over under is low, but I really do think Stanford's going to struggle to score, and I don't know if Miami has 35, 38 points to put up.
So I'm going to go Miami 38, Stanford 17.
Okay.
Um, and look, I think that's a comfortable game for Miami. Again, I think the lines are wild to me, but I'm not a betting guy and I would not bet this game anyways, but I think this is
You
a
don't
good
have the FBI banging down your door this morning?
no. So, I do think Miami's offense gets going. I think the defense plays well, holds a team under 20 points. And to me, guy, like I get everything you're saying about like, you know, yes, Stanford's limited on offense. They're gonna have a bunch of backups potentially. To me, man, anytime you play a power four team and you hold them under 20 points, your defense is doing its job. So that's my approach with that. And to me, it's just a confidence game for the whole team in general. Handle business, get on to next week against SMU, and really like that's the only thing that matters. Like we will hyper analyze this because that's what we do and we love it and we like getting in the weeds. But at the end of the day, like the Miami just needs to go 1-0 6 times in the next
Hmm.
6 weeks. And I don't care if they win those games by the score of 2-0 because this is playoff elimination time.
Yep.
Just go out, play a clean game. If Miami plays a clean game, they're gonna win. And look, you know this about me, Gabby. Like I'm not a believer, or I've never been prior to this season. I've never been a believer in the whole thinking of like, as long as Miami doesn't beat itself, they're gonna go win the game. Because I didn't think Miami was good enough to really have that apply to them. I think this team is that is applicable to this team. I think if Miami goes out, plays a clean game over the next 6 weeks, they're going to win each game. So that's the challenge to me for Miami this week. Miami versus Miami, and we'll see how it goes. But I do think it's going to be a fairly comfortable game, get right game from a Louisville game that look, Louisville really did just kind of thread the needle. I mean, credit to them, but they threaded the needle, got the win, and now Miami has to bounce back. So I'm still confident in this team being good. I'm still confident in this team making a postseason run, and that starts this week. So we'll get out of here on that note. I that over under man 45. Oof, that's very low.
Yes.
I don't know. I think there's a chance. I mean, I don't know. There's a chance Miami scores in the 40s alone, I think.
I
But
hope so.
I'm
That
not
would be
predicting
nice.
it, but I don't know.
I'm here for that.
Let me ask you
I'm here
this.
for
Like, let's say Miami runs for 185.
Yeah,
It's a blowout, right? Like
for
that's
sure.
probably the stat in this game, the stat you look at. Because if they run it for that, they're going to be passing well too.
Yep.
Like,
If you're running the ball well, they're passing the ball well. So if you're telling me they're running for 185 yards, then yeah, this is blowout city.
yeah. And the defense will be fine. I think the defense is good, man. Like, yes,
Yeah.
those explosive touchdowns against Louisville were frustrating,
But that's why to me it's like
but
this is one of those games where it's just like drop the hammer. Like to
Yeah,
me, like this defense, if this defense is big time, like to me, like I don't think this team scores more than 2 touchdowns on you if you're for real. But that's just me.
I understand what you're saying. We'll see.
This
14,
offensive person,
14 points
whatever.
is tough. 14
It
points.
is, but you should like to me that's gotta be on the table. I think that's gotta
Yeah,
be on the table.
right. What if it's 17? Are you disappointed?
Nah, I'm not. I mean, it's not that I'd be disappointed. I think that this is a game where I think you have a really good matchup, like on the from a defensive perspective. I think they have pretty limited personnel that again, plays hard and all that stuff, but
Yeah, I agree with you.
I think that this is a game where I mean, like, how many points did you like? USF scored 12 points on this defense, and
Right,
USF has a significantly better offense. So Florida had like 6 points in the fourth quarter on this defense. Like, go play that, go be that defense. Like, I think this
right,
defense needs to get. And I'm not saying they're that, and I'm not trying to hyper analyze the Louisville game, but to me, this defense needs to have kind of another like needs to remind everyone that this defense is legit. And I think if this defense really is legit against this offense specifically, they should feast. Like I think that this should be a quite dominant defensive performance. So that's why
yeah,
to me I'm not like the under. It seems to me kind of enticing because I'm just like I feel like this is a game where Stanford you should kind of choke out Stanford and they should really struggle in this game. But we're gonna find out if that's what happens. So. I mean, if they
yeah,
score 17, it's going to be all right. Well, Stanford scored 17, or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just wrong in the way I kind of view this matchup. But that's where I'm at.
yeah. No, all fair points. It'll be an interesting game. I think we both agree that should be a comfortable win for Miami. We'll see how it plays out. Go check us out on InsideTheU.com. Uh, appreciate everyone for listening. And until next time, take care.